The rain was falling heavily that night in Lagos. Thunder cracked across the sky as three young girls stood barefoot outside a rusty gate, their small bags soaked with rainwater. Behind the gate, their father's voice roared with anger.
Leave my house! I said I want a boy, not useless girl!
The oldest girl, Ada, only 16 years old, held her two younger sisters tightly. Daddy, please,
Please, we have
she
nowhere to
cried.
go.
Where will we
Please, Dad.
go? But the
Please
man
let us
inside the
in,
compound didn't
please.
answer. Instead, the metal gate slammed shut, and just like that, three daughters became strangers to their own father. But what that man did not know was that 10 years later, those same daughters would return to Lagos, not as poor girls begging for shelter, but as powerful women who owned half the city. And when karma finally spoke, it spoke loudly. 10 years earlier, the Ajayi family lived in a small but respectable compound in Surulere, Lagos. The father, Mr. Kunle Ajayi, was a proud and stubborn man. He owned a small transport business with two buses that carried passengers across Lagos. His wife, Bisi, was a quiet woman who sold food by the roadside. To outsiders, they looked like a normal family, but inside the house, there was a problem that poisoned everything. Kunle Ajayi desperately wanted a son, but fate had given him three daughters instead: Ada, Tola, and little Mimi. At first, he tried to hide his disappointment, but as years passed, his bitterness grew like a disease. Every time someone in the neighborhood celebrated the birth of a boy, Kunle's mood darkened. He began to drink more. He shouted more, and slowly. His anger started landing on his daughters. You girls are useless, he would say. You cannot carry my name. You cannot continue my bloodline. Ada often stood in front of her younger sisters to protect them. Even at 16, she had already learned that love would not come from her father. One evening, Bisi gathered the courage to tell her husband something important. Kunle, I'm pregnant again. For a moment, the man froze. Then his face lit up with excitement. This time it will be a boy, he said confidently. For sure. For months, he treated Bisi like a queen. He stopped shouting. He even bought baby clothes. But when the day finally came, the doctor delivered the news. It's a girl. Kunle Ajayi did not speak for a long time. Then he walked out of the hospital without saying a word. That night, the house became a battlefield. You have cursed me, he screamed at Bisi. Four girls? Four? The children trembled in fear. Ada tried to calm him. Daddy, please. Shut up, he yelled. Then he said the words that changed everything. If I cannot have a son in this house, then I don't need daughters. The storm that night was violent. Wind shook the trees and rain flooded the street. Kunle dragged Ada's small bag from the room and threw it outside. Take your sisters and leave, Bisi cried and begged. But Kunle had already made up his mind. One by one, he pushed the girls out of the gate. Ada, Tola, Mimi. The metal gate slammed shut behind them. Ada knocked desperately. Daddy, please. No answer, only the sound of rain. Little Mimi clung to her sister. Are we going to die? She whispered. Ada wiped her tears. No, she said softly. We will survive. But deep inside, she didn't know how. That night, under a broken bus stop shelter, Ada made a promise. She looked at her sisters and said something that would shape their future. One day, she whispered, we will come back to Lagos. And nobody will ever treat us like this again. Tola sniffed. But how? Ada stared at the city lights glowing through the rain. By becoming stronger than anyone who ever hurt us. The girls slept hungry that night. But what they didn't know was that their story had just begun. And 10 years later, the city of Lagos would know their names. If you're enjoying this story so far, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this powerful story. 10 years after that stormy night, a convoy of black SUVs slowly drove through the busy streets of Lagos. Traffic stopped. People stared. Inside the first car sat a young woman wearing dark glasses and a calm, powerful expression. Her name was Ada Ajayi. once a homeless girl thrown out by her father, now one of the most powerful young businesswomen in Lagos. But nobody in that traffic knew something shocking. The convoy was heading somewhere very specific, a small, forgotten street in Surulere, the same street where a man named Kunle Ajayi once screamed, I want a son, not useless daughters. And when the convoy finally stopped in front of his compound, Karma began to wake up. But before that moment happened, a lot had taken place because 10 years earlier, three frightened girls were still trying to survive the streets. After that terrible night, Ada, Tola, and Mimi wandered through Lagos with no idea where to go. The city was cruel to children with no home. Cars rushed past, people ignored them, some even insulted them. Street kids, one woman muttered. Ada held her sisters close. We are not street kids, she whispered firmly. We just lost our home. For 2 days they barely ate. Sometimes kind traders at the market gave them leftover food. Other times they drank only water from public taps. Little Mimi cried often. I want mommy, she would say. Ada's heart broke every time she heard that, but she knew something important. If she broke down, her sisters would lose hope, so she stayed strong. One night the girl slept under a wooden stall in a market. The streets were quiet, but danger was everywhere. Around midnight, two men approached slowly. They had been watching the girls. Look at them, one man whispered. Three of them, easy money. Ada woke up when she heard footsteps. Her body froze. The men were standing right in front of them. Where are your parents? One asked with a cruel smile. Ada didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed Tola and Mimi tightly. The man crouched closer. You girls should come with us. At that moment, a loud voice interrupted. Leave them alone. Everyone turned. An elderly woman stood there holding a heavy stick. Her eyes were fierce. You criminals, she shouted. Go before I call the police. The two men cursed and ran away. Ada stared at the woman with tears in her eyes. You saved us, she whispered. The woman studied the girls carefully. Then she asked one simple question. Where is your home? Toad hesitated. Then she told the truth. We don't have one anymore. The woman introduced herself as Mama Ife. She owned a small restaurant near the market. Her face was strict, but her heart was kind. She brought the girls to her shop and gave them warm food. It was the best meal they had eaten in days. Mimi nearly cried while eating. Mama Ife watched them quietly. You girls are not ordinary street children, she said finally. Ada lowered her eyes. Our father chased us away. Mama Ife sighed deeply. Some men do not understand the blessing of daughters. Then she made a decision. You can stay with me, but you must work hard. Ada nodded immediately. We will do anything. From that day forward, their new life began. Learning to survive life with Mama Eve was not easy. The girls woke up before sunrise every day. Ada washed dishes, Tola cleaned tables, Mimi helped serve food. The work was exhausting, but they finally had something they had lost before: safety. And slowly, they started dreaming again. Ada was the most determined. Every night after work, she borrowed old books from a nearby school. She studied business, numbers, and English. Mama Ife noticed her effort. You want to become something big, don't you? She asked one night. Ada looked up. Yes. How big? Ada's answer surprised her. Bigger than anyone who ever looked down on us. Mama Ife smiled slightly. Good. Never think small. One afternoon, a wealthy customer entered the restaurant. His name was Mr. Ibrahim Bello, a powerful businessman visiting Lagos. While eating, he noticed Ada arguing with a supplier who was trying to cheat Mama Ife. Ada calculated the correct price quickly and proved the man wrong. Mr. Bello watched with interest. After the supplier left, he called her over. What is your name? Ada. Do you go to school? Ada shook her head. No, sir. Mr. Bello leaned back thoughtfully. That is a waste. He looked at Mama Ife. This girl has talent. 2 weeks later, something unbelievable happened. Mr. Bello arranged school scholarships for all three girls. Ada could hardly believe it. For the first time since their father abandoned them, hope returned fully. The sisters worked harder than anyone in school. Ada focused on business and finance. Tola developed an interest in technology and computers. Little Mimi surprised everyone by becoming brilliant in law and public speaking. Years passed quickly. By the time Ada turned 26, everything had changed. With help from Mr. Bello's mentorship, Ada started a small logistics company, then another, then a transportation network. Within a few years, the company expanded across Lagos. Tola created a successful tech startup. Mimi became a respected young lawyer known for fighting injustice. Together, the sisters became incredibly wealthy and powerful. But one thing never left Ada's heart: the memory of that rainy night, the sound of the gate closing, and their father's voice shouting, "I want a son." Meanwhile, their father, while the daughters were rising, their father's life was collapsing. Kunle Ajayi lost his transport business. One bus broke down, the other was seized because of debt. His drinking worsened. Neighbors whispered about him. Life has punished that man. His wife, Bisi, had died years earlier from illness. Now Kunle lived alone in the same old house, old, bitter, and poor. Sometimes he remembered the daughters he chased away, but pride always stopped him from searching for them. They were useless girls anyway, he would mutter, but deep inside, regret was slowly eating him alive. 10 years later, the convoy of black SUVs stopped in front of that same compound in Surulere. Neighbors watched in shock. Security guards stepped out first. Then Ada emerged from the car, elegant, confident, powerful. Tola and Mimi stepped out behind her. The gate looked exactly the same as the night they were thrown out, rusty, cold. Ada stared at it silently. Tola whispered, "Are you ready?" Ada took a deep breath. Yes. She pushed the gate open. Inside the compound, an old man sat on a broken chair. Kunle Ajayi, their father. He looked up slowly, and when his eyes landed on the three women standing in front of him, his face turned pale because somehow, even after 10 years, he recognized them. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The daughters he rejected had returned, but they were no longer powerless girls. They were women who owned the world he once controlled, and karma was only beginning. If you're enjoying this story so far, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this emotional story. The old man's hands began to shake. Kunle Ajayi slowly stood up from the broken chair inside his small compound in Lagos. Three elegant women stood before him. Expensive cars waited outside the gate. Security guards stood quietly behind them. But Kunle wasn't looking at the cars. He was staring at their faces, faces he had once pushed out into the rain. Ah, Ada, he whispered. The tallest woman removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were calm, cold. Yes, she said quietly. I'm Ada. Kunle's legs almost gave way. His daughters, the same daughters he once called useless, were standing in front of him looking like queens, and suddenly, for the first time in 10 years, fear entered his heart, because deep inside he knew something. Karma had finally arrived. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The compound looked smaller than Ada remembered. The walls were cracked. The paint had faded. The proud house her father once bragged about now looked abandoned. Tola looked around slowly. So this is what's left of his empire, she muttered quietly. Mimi folded her arms. The confident lawyer who now argued cases in courtrooms across Lagos, but standing here, she felt like the little girl who once cried outside this gate. Kunle cleared his throat. You, you girls are alive. Ada looked directly into his eyes. Did you expect us to die? Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Kunle lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he had no answer. Kunle looked older than his age. His hair had turned gray. His clothes were worn. His once powerful voice sounded weak. Ada studied him carefully. The man who once terrified them now looked broken. Tola finally spoke. So where is the son you wanted so badly? The question hit Kunle like a slap. His lips trembled. There was never a son. The truth hung in the air. Ada wasn't surprised. Life had already told her that story. But hearing it from him made the moment heavier. Kunle swallowed hard. After you left, your mother became sick. The sisters' expressions changed. Our mother, Mimi whispered. Kunle nodded slowly. She missed you every day. His voice cracked. She kept saying I should bring you back. Ada's chest tightened. Did you? Kunle shook his head. No. Silence returned, and the weight of his decision became even clearer. Kunle sat down slowly again. His hands trembled as he spoke. Your mother died 3 years after you left. The words hit the sisters like thunder. Mimi stepped back. What? Ada's heart pounded. You're lying. Kunle shook his head. No. His voice broke. Her last wish was to see you girls again. The compound became completely silent. Even the sounds of the busy Lagos street outside seemed distant. Tola clenched her fist. You robbed her of that. Kunle nodded slowly. I know. For the first time, the proud man who once ruled the house admitted something. I destroyed my own family. Ada's mind returned to that rainy night. The sound of the gate closing, the cold water soaking their clothes, her little sister asking if they were going to die, and her father's voice shouting, I want a son. She looked at the old man sitting in front of her. 10 years ago he had power. Today he had nothing. Not his business, not his wife, not his daughters, only regret. Ada took a deep breath. We didn't come here to hear excuses. Kunle nodded weakly. I understand. By now the entire street was watching. Neighbors gathered near the gate. They whispered among themselves. Is that not Kunle's daughters? The same girls he chased away? And look at them now. The convoy of expensive vehicles made the story even more shocking. Everyone could see the truth. The daughters he rejected had returned as powerful women, and the father who wanted a son had lost everything. Kunle slowly stood again. His pride had completely disappeared. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said quietly, but please, his voice shook, give this old man one chance. Ada stared at him. Her sisters looked at her. For years, Ada had imagined this moment. In her dreams, she thought she would feel satisfaction, maybe even revenge, but standing here, she felt something different, sadness, because revenge could not bring back their mother, and it could not erase the pain of the past. Mimi stepped forward, the youngest sister, but now the strongest voice. You called us useless girls. Kunle lowered his eyes. You said we could not carry your name. He nodded slowly. Mimi gestured toward the street. Look outside. Kunle looked. The black SUVs, the guards, the attention of the entire neighborhood. That company outside, Mimi said calmly, belongs to Ada. Kunle's eyes widened. And the technology firm in Victoria Island, Tola added. That's mine, Mimi continued. And the law firm fighting corruption cases across Lagos. She paused. That one is mine. Kunle stared at them in shock. The daughters he once rejected had become more successful than he ever dreamed. Ada stepped forward slowly. She was the leader, the one who had protected her sister since childhood. Kunle could barely look at her. I don't deserve your kindness, he whispered. Ada spoke carefully. You're right. The words cut deep, but she continued. You destroyed our childhood, Kunle nodded painfully, and you robbed our mother of peace. Tears filled his eyes. Ada paused. Then she said something nobody expected. But we will not become the kind of people you were. Kunle looked up slowly, confused. What? What do you mean? Ada pointed at the broken house. You can't live like this. Kunle looked embarrassed. I deserve it. Ada shook her head. No. She turned toward her sisters. We didn't become successful just to watch someone suffer. Then she faced Kunle again. We will rebuild this house. Kunle's eyes widened in disbelief. And we will take care of you in your old age. Tola added quietly, but not as your daughters. Kunle froze. Mimi finished the sentence. As people who chose to be better than you were. The words hit harder than any punishment because they carried truth. The old man collapsed into tears, real tears, the kind that come from deep regret. I don't deserve you, he cried. Ada nodded. That's true. But she placed an envelope on the table. Inside were documents. For a small apartment, she explained. You'll live there comfortably. Kunle stared at the papers. His daughters had every reason to abandon him, but instead, they were saving him from the consequences of his own life. That realization hurt more than punishment ever could. Before leaving, Ada said one last thing. You wanted a son to carry your name. Kunle listened quietly. But daughters can carry something far more important. She looked him directly in the eyes. They can carry strength. Tola smiled slightly. They can carry success, Mimi added firmly, and they can carry forgiveness. Kunle closed his eyes as tears rolled down his face, because in that moment, he finally understood something too late. The greatest blessing he ever had were the daughters he threw away. The sisters walked back toward the gate. The neighbors moved aside respectfully. Everyone watched the powerful women leave. Kunle stood in the doorway, old, regretful, but alive long enough to learn the truth. As the convoy drove away through the busy streets of Lagos, Ada looked out the window quietly. Tola asked softly, Do you regret helping him? Ada shook her head. No. Why? Ada smiled faintly. Because karma already did its job. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply becoming successful without the people who doubted you. If you enjoyed this story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this, because sometimes life proves one powerful truth. Never underestimate daughters. One day, they might return as the strongest people you ever knew.